What's up, pirates, mermaids, and sea creatures? I'm Web Captain Drew, and welcome back to Galactic Island. That's right, I am your host for our show about paranormal, the discussion of paranormal through the mind of Web Captain Drew. So glad you could join us, and we're going to get things kicked off today. Today, we're going to be discussing the supernatural. That's right. What's the difference between, as we get out of Halloween, we start to head towards Turkey Day? What is the difference between haunted houses, ghost hunting, and the supernatural? So, we're going to get into that. Just stick by and we'll get things started. All right, so like I said, supernatural discussion, and I thought it'd be fun maybe if I could just spin around on my chair and do a little action segment, because that's always kind of cool to get a little action going there, disco tech sort of thing. So, as we look into this, of course, full disclosure, if anybody is sensitive about their religious beliefs, then this may not be the episode for you, because I don't subscribe to regular ideas of organized religion. I have researched for many years. I was brought up in the church, and I always find it ironic that most churches say that other churches are cults, and then you look at the church that you're going to, and you start to ask yourself when you're old enough to question things, well, doesn't that make you a cult too? Because all these other churches are allegedly going to go to hell and burn, and if you don't subscribe to their religion or their beliefs, and I just don't buy that. I don't think that if there's a benevolent creator, I don't think he judges people based on what church they go to. It's just doesn't make sense to me. And a lot of religions that criticize other religions that don't have the same belief systems, I find odd too. What makes you think that your religion makes sense over somebody else's? So, not to get too far off topic, but I do believe that we live in a matrix. A lot of people might not understand that concept, but as science gets more into breaking down things like the God particle and finding out that space is just not empty, that there are many things holding everything together, it only makes sense that things could have been created one way. And if you are truly a good person or a religious person and you believe in those things, then we are all the same brothers and sisters. We come from the same lineage, and that's one of the things that is hard, I think, when you look at people maybe that with racism and stuff like that. That person is you, and so if you're critical of the people around you, just remember that it's hard to be nice to people sometimes, but we're all related. We all go back to the same family tree. So what I found interesting when I was coming up with this idea for the discussion about supernatural was I had seen where a politician was discussing, of course, Atlas, 3i Atlas is still the big topic on social media and all through all the threads of platforms, podcast platforms. And I was listening to this segment because I was getting the update. I like to, now because it's getting close, I like to get the update to see what they're making of this this comet. So the politician, who was very well known, was saying that he is wanting to find out more about the subject of UAPs, UFOs, which I always think is good, because so it's always good when we hear politicians say those sorts of things, because that does mean that we are going to get closer to disclosure. And disclosure is important for humanity, because it is the only way that we can understand where we come from completely. And if you are a spiritual person, there's a lot of people right now that are battling with the idea that UFOs are going to make them not be able to believe in their religion anymore. The problem with that is that if your religion does not adhere to what the UFOs or aliens teach us or tell us, it doesn't mean you have to stop doing your religion. It just means that there is more knowledge that we all need to know in order for mankind to transcend to the next level of intelligence as a species, as humanity as a species. So when he was saying, this politician said that he wanted to do more research and study UAPs, I thought, well, that's good. And he made the comment something along the lines of that he believes that maybe not in aliens, but that they could be angels or demons. And of course, who knows, right? We don't know yet what any of it could be, but I don't think, like, from what religion teaches us, that angels and demons need a spaceship or a vehicle to go back and forth. Because if you're discussing supernatural, like ghost energy and stuff like that, residual energy, there's really no need for them to have a vehicle to fly around and go from place to place, right? You don't need that if you're omnipresent, whatever the word might be. So I kind of was listening to that thinking, this is my problem with religion, because they don't want to let go of the fact that science really is the truth and the basis of everything. We found out things over the years that science is right about. That we can also, maybe it goes back to some of the stories that we were told from the ancient books, the holy books. They're considered to be also historical in some things, like the Great Flood. They said that scientists have found that there was a flood at one time. So all things go back to these stories, but what does religion really teach us about ourselves? That you do certain things, that you're going to be punished. To me, those are constructs. And so the constructs of humans have to understand first the science part before you can become transcendent, in order to understand where we really come from. And if we're all part of the same being, that means that we all help to create this matrix that we live in. And this is not a theory that I've come up with on my own. I believe this for a long time before. There's a movie called Glitch in the Matrix, if you want to check that out. And it does talk about this subject, and it is a very interesting movie. Just a heads up, it does have maybe some graphic content in it, which is maybe some people might find disturbing if you're not into that kind of thing. But this does also kind of put things into, as we start to build more and more with computers and AI, we're starting to figure things out a lot quicker and faster, because a global community can create and learn from each other quicker with the internet and artificial intelligence. So if you think about how in the beginning of time we thought everything was flat, right? Humans weren't that intelligent, but what made us think that? Because if you're building a program, you start with a line of code in order to make an actual place that resides your character. And this is the only way that we can possibly exist. And no matter what you might think about this idea of being weird or wrong, it's going to become more apparent as people get more intelligent. And people start to see that this is really how we are able to come up with humanity, how we were created. And there is an architect that we have been able to build this over time and build civilization to become what it is today. And one day we will move on to the next level. In order for us to find that, we have to learn how we created it in the beginning. So some people might go to flat earth theory, and if you think about it, well, squares, also equals circle, right? Geometry. Everything that we look at can, as a construct, can be deconstructed somehow. In order for that to really happen, or for us to have organic things that we can live in, or like say society has built these ideas, why did we build these laws and these religions? I once heard an intelligent person say that religion was created to control the masses. That, if you think about it, which was said a long time ago, explains why we created these organizations to help build constructs. Because just like some people maybe don't like the police, right? You know, you have these factions that, you know, something happens and everybody attacks them. But think of what kind of world we would live in if we didn't have the police, right? We have to have some kind of order and control that we don't let society go cuckoo crazy. So if we let religion evolve with those thoughts, I think we can come to a better resolution of where we really came from. But religious people do not like you telling them that their religion is wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in order for us to have what we live in, it had to be built by us. Think about it. Like, we all have this knowledge inside of us. Everybody's born with this intelligence. You just have to tap into it and understand what it really means. So you can't wrap your mind around it all at once. It took me decades to figure out what I really truly believed in as far as religion and the way we lived in society with each other, how we all got along with communities, war, all these things. Like, what's it all about, right? If life was just perfect, there would really be no point. So we've created a lot of times disasters, and those are things that we need to fix to be able to, in order to transcend up to the next level. So for some, they think, well, we will go to heaven, or maybe you're going to go to hell. But really the truth is we will just keep on repeating the same life that we've created. And that brings us to the multiverse theory, which I also think is very interesting. Because if you think about the star system, and how there's billions of galaxies or stars, I mean, there's a potential for Earth on another solar system somewhere. This exact same place is happening somewhere else. But in the multiverse world, it could be a little bit different. So, for instance, I could be talking to you from this side. Or my hair could be blonde. Or you don't know, because multiverse theory is also very hard to understand. But if you think about it, like, when you have, like, say you have something, stop, pause, break. Yes, so when you have, like, deja vu, how could that be possible?
My disappointment.
It couldn't be possible, right? How does that happen? You've been there before, you have that feeling that you've been there before? Because it probably has happened maybe thousands of times. That's the only way that we can build this construct that we lived in, that we have lived in the past, in the future. You know, a lot of things that we believe in, they do make sense. Why we created religions, you know, if you go back to the history, why would we create religions? To help make people think that other people were going to burn eternally. Like, what that was is that people were creating religions in order to control their communities. Because if we didn't have that, you would also have factions of people that didn't do things that the community wanted them to do. Like, for instance, I find this, I did a whole album about the LGBTQ community in support of them, because when I think about how religion has kind of marginalized them, it makes me very angry, because nobody should have to live in a world where they are being segregated by politicians or religion. It doesn't make sense to me. And so when you think about religion criticizing those people too, why would they do that? So if you think about the history in communities, the only way that they would survive is if they had their communities grew. And if they weren't growing because people weren't reproducing, then they had to come up with ways to make people think, if you don't get married and have children, so we can have the crops, bigger crops, and fend off the opposing communities in our surrounding areas, defense, and the community will die off. So an easy way to do that is create a hell for people to go to if you don't follow their way. And so over time, these religions have always gained people because people like to be told what to do. Like, that sounds not right, that we like to be told what to do. But if there's a status quo, it's easier for people to say, oh, well, my neighbor goes to that church, so maybe I want to go to that church too. And then, when that neighbor says, oh, I don't go there no more, I don't follow that church anymore, then people start to get an idea, well, that doesn't gel for me either. So it seems counterintuitive that we want to be told what to do, but it makes it easier for people to believe in something. And that's what's weird about the supernatural, because we know there are things out there that we can't explain, right? There's been, documentation, just like with ghost hunting and all these haunted houses and all those stories. There's been a lot of documentation, just like we talk about Bigfoot or UFOs, that there are supernatural things out there that we don't understand. And I truly believe that that is our ancestors, and they are our guardian angels, or they are helping to control the construct so we don't all blow everything to smithereens. Now, this is just my ideas. These are my thoughts, and you can not agree with me, that's fine. But at the same time, I do think that because of how I grew up and I learned about religion, it made me want to know about other religions. And what I found out is that a lot of times they're the same. They're kind of based on the same things, or they have one or two different things that are different. And why are there so many religions? Like, that's something that doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it. You have families that grow up in a church, and that's all they're going to think. And they think that faith will save them. Well, I'm not telling anybody to quit your religion because of what I say, but, it's good to really understand how science works, because one day we are going to find out the truth about all this. And I really think that science is going to be the predominant source of finding out the truth. And I heard somebody recently say that disclosure might be a letdown for us. And I follow this person, so I kind of thought that was an interesting statement, because disclosure is probably the biggest story to happen since the time of Christ, AD. BC, the changing of things because people, the way they viewed their religion, because of the historical figure Jesus. So when you think about what's getting ready to happen with disclosure, that will replace a lot of things. And it won't replace organized religion, because you're always going to have people that go to church, or they want to stay at their religion, they want to have their faith. But what it will do is also tell the truth about why we have these, in some circles I would say you would call them like messianic prophets or deities, or gods that people worship around the world, different gods for all different cultures. And cultures are very different when it comes to supernatural. But sometimes it's weird too, because a religion could be totally different, but people have the same beliefs about a lot of things too. So is that because cultures adopted what the other religions were, so then they were worshiping their own gods, and then they subscribed to their own belief system in order to keep their own culture intact? So it's a very interesting story. I'll be interested to see the comments that come flying in on this one, because I know, like, as soon as you talk about religion, you're definitely getting into some some thin ice waters with some people. But as you get to be my age, you start to care less and less about what people think, because you start to realize the truth, and you do really want people to know what you have learned through a lot of trial and pain and suffering that I had to go through to figure out what it is and why we are here. Why is life so special and important for us that we should learn the truth about what we were taught as far as our belief system goes. And the real truth of the matter is that is what life is all about, is figuring out these secrets. If you got kids in the room, you may want to earmuff them at this point. Earmuffs for the kids. So, like, when your parents raised you and taught you that Santa Claus, was keeping a list, you have to kind of think of that, like as you get older and then you find out, okay, well, Santa Claus didn't exist. My parents did that because they were doing something nice for me. It's a little white lie. Well, you kind of get that, and I've heard that a long time ago. I remember the children that I went to public school, and I was pretty popular. I had a lot of friends when I was like in elementary school, and I remember my father was a firefighter. And I remember when he decided he was going to become a minister, and then he did. He ended up becoming a full-time minister. And it was really hard for me as a young person because I became instantly unpopular. People can be really mean and cruel, and they would say stuff to me like, your dad doesn't have a real job. And I was, floored that these were people that used to be my friends. And that wasn't right either, because the church does do a lot of good things for people. So, at the same time, I do not subscribe to religion or organized church, but, it's okay for anyone to believe what they want to believe, but science is going to definitely be interesting in this next decade as we start to have these politicians say they're going to get to the bottom of it. Because if they want to be reelected, they better start digging up the info. They better tell us why they haven't been telling us things and keeping things secret. Because we all know, Roswell was a cover-up, right? It happened. There's too many deathbed confessions and people that were a part of that, and the people actually from the town of Roswell that spoke about it and things that happened to them because of it. So there has been a top secret thing about this for a very long time. People were tired of being lied to. And the same thing will happen also with religion. We will start to have more people like me saying the same things. That we are living in a type of matrix that might be hard for some people to deal with or understand. But, it's really the truth. It's the only way we can exist. And it's the only way we can be created, that we have got to be the ones in control of this too, because if we don't get the reins on it, we will end up blowing each other apart, and we don't want that, right? We don't want that you don't want that for your children, your children's children. We can transcend to a better place if we understand each other better and realize that there's more to life than maybe what we were originally told or thought. So I'll leave you with that, and I hope you enjoyed my discussion today. I'm getting pretty anxious to get to the new pirate headquarters. Like I said, as we pack things up here, so we can see what we'll do next or new. But I have enjoyed doing this, and if you do like our discussions, please feel free to go over to Web Captain Drew's Bandcamp page, which is Sparrowradio at Bandcamp. And also, if you'd like to help support the show, you can buy a t-shirt from the RumBullets Bonfire store, our third-party merchants. We would love to thank them for all the hard work they do for us and give us a way to have our products out there so you can help support the show. And if not, just come over on social media and give us a thumbs up. We'd like to hear from you. Go say hello to Liz from Goddesses of the Sea, our CEO. We call her the Admiral of the Fleet. And also ELLE from Celebrity Adjacent. I call her our Mermaid Queen. And we always appreciate our collaborations. So maybe if you want to collaborate too, you can also give us a shout out from the acknowledgments page on Sparrowradio.com. And I'm going to get out of here, but I want to introduce this next song. It's off of my Hail to the Thief and His Tax Bimbos. That's one thing you can count on, right, is death and taxes. That's pretty much the basis for all of humanity right there. This is Web Captain Drew, over and out. Pirates, mermaids, sea creatures, have yourself a good week, and goodbye!
Below